You believe you're in control of your purchasing decisions. You believe you buy what you need, when you need it, based on rational calculations of utility and price. You believe your possessions serve you. But what if I told you that every single object you've ever purchased has been silently rewriting the rules? What if the act of acquisition itself is a form of submission? What if the moment you say yes to one thing, you're signing an invisible contract with a dozen others? We live in a world that worships choice. Freedom, they say, is having options. But true freedom isn't measured by how many things you can buy. It's measured by how many things you can refuse. And most people have lost that ability entirely. They don't know it yet, but they're trapped in a cycle so elegant, so psychologically sophisticated. This video will show you the architecture of that trap. More importantly, it will hand you the tools to dismantle it. By the time we're done here, you'll understand something most people never see. You'll learn how a single purchase triggers an avalanche of subsequent needs. You'll discover why your possessions don't just cost money, they cost freedom. And you'll walk away with a strategic framework for breaking the cycle entirely. Let me start with something you recognize. You buy the new iPhone Pro Max, top of the line. The best camera, the biggest screen, the most storage. You feel good about this decision. You researched it. You saved for it. You earned it. But here's what happens next. The phone arrives. It's beautiful, but now it needs protection. So you buy the case. But not just any case, a premium one that matches the phone's prestige. Then you realize the phone doesn't come with a charger anymore. So you buy the fast charger. But you also need a wireless charging pad for your nightstand. And while you're at it, the wired earbuds that came with your old phone look ridiculous next to this new. So you upgrade to AirPods Pro. Maybe you add a screen protector, a car mount, a second cable for work. What just happened? You made one decision. But that one decision triggered 5 more. And here's the psychological poison. Each subsequent purchase felt logical, necessary even. You weren't being impulsive. You were being consistent. You were protecting your investment. You were completing the ecosystem. And that's exactly how the trap works. This isn't a new phenomenon. In 1765, a French philosopher named Denis Diderot was living in poverty. He was brilliant, but broke, content with his simple life, his modest possessions, his worn furniture. Then something changed. He received a financial windfall, a fortune. For the first time in his life, he had money, and with that money, he bought himself a gift. A beautiful scarlet dressing gown, luxurious, elegant, unlike anything he'd ever owned before. Diderot loved that robe, but almost immediately something began to bother him. The robe was magnificent, but everything else in his study suddenly looked shabby by comparison. His old desk seemed crude next to the refined silk. His chairs looked peasant-like. His rug was an embarrassment, so he replaced them, one by one. The desk, the chairs, the rug, the curtains, the artwork on the walls. He rebuilt his entire environment to match the aesthetic standard set by a single garment. And by the time he was finished, he was poor again, trapped in a home that was beautiful, but no longer his. He had become, in his own words, a slave to his possessions. This is what psychologists now call the Diderot Effect. And it governs more of your life than you realize. The mechanism is simple but devastatingly powerful. When you introduce a new item into your life that represents a higher standard of quality, taste, or status, your brain craves harmony, consistency. So it begins to pressure you to upgrade everything else to match. You don't buy one thing, you buy an identity. And that identity demands total commitment. Let's be clear about what's happening here. This isn't about vanity. It's not about being materialistic or shallow. This is about something far more primal. Human beings are pattern-seeking creatures. We need our internal self-image to align with our external environment. When there's a mismatch, we experience psychological tension. A man who sees himself as successful cannot tolerate wearing a cheap watch. A woman who identifies as sophisticated cannot stomach using a cracked phone screen. The object itself isn't the issue. The issue is the story the object tells about who you are. And once that story changes, everything else must change to match. Consider the fitness industry. Someone buys a Peloton bike. It's expensive. It's a commitment. It's a signal to themselves and others that they're serious about health. But now they need the Peloton clothes, the special cycling shoes, the heart rate monitor, the mat underneath the bike so it doesn't scratch the floor. And suddenly their home gym corner looks out of place in the living room. So they renovate. They repaint. They add new lighting, they buy plants. They create an entire aesthetic environment that matches the level of investment represented by the bike. What started as a fitness decision became a lifestyle renovation. The real danger isn't the money. Money is just the surface symptom. The real cost is what economists call the chain reaction expense. Most people calculate the price of they see the number on the tag and decide if they can afford it. But they never calculate the true cost. The true cost is the object plus every subsequent purchase it demands. The true cost of a kitchen renovation isn't just the cabinets and countertops. It's the realization 3 months later that the old living room furniture now looks absurd next to the new. The true cost of the luxury car isn't the sticker price. It's the premium insurance, the high-grade fuel, the expensive maintenance, the underground parking spot, and here's where it gets truly insidious. These new possessions don't just cost money. They cost freedom. Diderot wrote that he used to be able to do whatever he wanted in his old robe. It was worn, comfortable, familiar. He could spill ink on it, tear it, drape it carelessly over a chair. But the new robe? He couldn't relax. He had to preserve it, protect it. He had become its servant. The same thing happens with the white couch. The expensive rug, the pristine sneakers you never actually wear because you're afraid to scuff them. You bought these things to enhance your life, but instead, they've narrowed it. You've traded autonomy for aesthetics. You've become a curator of your own museum, walking carefully through rooms you're afraid to actually live in. So how do you break this? How do you escape a trap that's wired directly into your psychology? First, you need to implement what I call the ecosystem cost filter. Before you buy anything significant, you must force yourself to calculate not just the price of the item. Here's how you do this practically. Apply the 10-second rule. Before you pay, close your eyes. Visualize the object in your actual home, your actual life. Not the idealized version, the real one. Now ask yourself this exact question. What does this object make everything else look like? If you're being honest, you'll feel it immediately. That tension, that dissonance, that whisper that says, if I get this, I'll need to change that. Now implement the survival budget. If the item costs X dollars, mentally reserve 2X, double the price. That second X is for the accessories, the maintenance, the harmony upgrades. If you don't have 2X, you cannot afford X. It's that simple. Don't buy the cheap printer if you can't stomach the expensive ink cartridges every month. Don't buy the luxury suit if you can't afford the dry cleaning bill every week. Don't buy the high-maintenance item unless you can afford to maintain it without resentment. Second, enforce the strictly static inventory rule. Transform the one-in, one-out concept from a vague guideline into a physical commitment. The closet test. If you want to buy a new shirt, identify right now before checkout. If you can't choose one to discard, it means you've already reached maximum satisfaction with what you have. You don't need more. You need discipline. But here's the key. The replacement must be significantly better than what it's replacing. Not just newer, better. This prevents the trap of upgrading for novelty while forcing you to focus on genuine utility. And critically, the old item must leave your home the same day the new item arrives. Not next week. Not when you get around to it same day. This prevents accumulation, which prevents the need for bigger closets, storage units, and home renovations. Third, adopt what I call the combat item philosophy. Stop thinking like a museum curator. Start thinking like a user. The red wine test. Before buying any furniture or textile, if the answer is yes, you're about to become a slave to that object. You'll spend your life protecting it, worrying about it, restricting how you and others interact with it. Choose things that let you live freely. Choose things that can take damage and still function. Embrace the identity of low maintenance. Take pride in owning things that last and don't demand constant care. There's a reverse status in being someone so secure that you don't need a $10,000 watch to be. There's sophistication in simplicity. And here's the real insight. Buy for your actual daily use. That idealized self doesn't exist. The real you exists. Buy for the real you. Let me ask you something. If you've made it this far, you're not like most people. Most people would have clicked away. They're not ready for this. They're still addicted to the comfort of consumption, the dopamine of acquisition. But you're different. You're here because something in you recognizes the truth. You're tired of the cycle. You're ready to break it. So I want you to do something. In the comments below, write this exact phrase. I choose freedom over accumulation. That's it. Simple. Clear. But here's why this matters. When you make a public declaration, you're not just announcing something to others. You're announcing it to yourself. You're creating a moment of commitment that your brain will remember. You're drawing a line between who you were and who you're becoming. Psychology shows us that public commitment creates accountability. It shifts your identity. So write it. And while you're there, hit that like button. Subscribe to this channel. Not because I'm asking for engagement, but because these actions are symbolic. They're a conscious choice to align yourself with a different way of thinking. With discipline, with clarity, with control. Now here's where things get more advanced. Everything I've told you so far is defense. It's how to protect yourself from the trap. But the people who truly win, the people who don't just avoid bad purchases, but actively design their lives, they understand that the real transformation doesn't come from willpower. Willpower is a finite resource. You can't rely on it. The real transformation comes from changing the nature of your beliefs, from rewiring your mindset. But here's what most mindset content gets wrong. They tell you to think differently and leave it at that, as if changing your thoughts alone will magically change your outcomes. It won't. You need a map. You need to identify the specific micro-skills, the specific mental frameworks. Consider this: if you want to stop waking up late, the mindset shift is important. Understanding why you want to wake early, connecting it to your identity, visualizing your future self. But you know what guarantees the result? Putting your phone in a different room before you sleep. Creating an environment where hitting snooze isn't an option. That's not willpower. That's architecture. You're designing a system where the desired behavior is the path of least resistance. The same principle applies to purchasing. You don't just need to believe that unnecessary purchases are harmful. You need to construct a life where unnecessary purchases are difficult to make. Delete the shopping apps from your phone. Unsubscribe from promotional emails. Remove your credit card information from saved browsers. Implement a 48-hour rule. If you want something, you must wait 2 full days before buying it. Most impulses die in that window. You're not fighting temptation, you're eliminating exposure.
But let's go even deeper. The truly sophisticated approach isn't just about restriction.
It's about replacement. You need to replace the psychological function that purchasing was serving. For most people, buying things is how they feel progress. It's how they experience novelty. It's how they signal to themselves that they're moving forward, improving, becoming better. If you remove that mechanism without replacing it, you'll fail. You'll feel deprived. You'll eventually relapse. So replace it. Channel that energy into acquiring skills instead of objects. Every time you feel the urge to buy something, invest that money in learning instead. A course, a book, a workshop, a coach. Skills compound, objects depreciate. Skills give you leverage. Objects give you maintenance costs. Skills increase your freedom. Objects decrease it. This isn't just financial advice. This is existential strategy. You're rewiring your dopamine system to crave growth instead of consumption. And here's the final layer. Once you've built this foundation, once you've escaped the Diderot trap and restructured your relationship, you gain clarity. When your life isn't cluttered with unnecessary possessions, on relationships, on creativity, on impact, on the work that will define your legacy. This is the secret the wealthiest people understand but rarely articulate. They're not minimalists because they can't afford luxury. They're minimalists because they've realized that every object you own is a small claim on your attention. And attention is the most valuable resource you have. More valuable than money. More valuable than time. Because attention is what you use to transform time into meaning. If your attention is fragmented across dozens of possessions, each requiring care, so here's the ultimate question. Not whether you can afford something, but whether it can afford you. Whether the object is worth the attention it will extract. Whether the purchase will expand your freedom or contract it. Whether it serves your actual life or the imaginary one you're performing for others. The answer to that question will determine everything. Your wealth, your peace, your power, your legacy. Choose wisely. And if you're ready to commit to this path, to this way of seeing, to this discipline, tell the world, tell yourself, I choose freedom over accumulation. Make it real, make it public, make it permanent. The trap is elegant. But now you see it, and once you see it, you can never unsee it. That's both a burden and a gift. Use it well.